There is one moment every police K9 handler dreads. It isn't the sound of gunfire. It isn't a suspect running. It's the moment your own police dog refuses to move. A trained K9 doesn't hesitate. They don't fear broken glass, blood, or armed suspects. They're trained to go wherever they're commanded without question. So when a veteran K9 handler tells you his partner planted his feet in a hallway and refused to take another step, you listen.
Because dogs don't lie. And on one ordinary night, muster, heel.
Refuse
Muster,
a direct
advance.
order for the first time in his career. Tonight you'll hear 3 true police horror stories from officers whose routine calls turned into the kind of nightmares they still can't explain years later. Welcome to Nightfall Narratives, where we tell true, grounded horror stories. No monsters, no ghosts, just the terrifying reality of what people sometimes discover in the dark. Before we begin, I have a quick favor to ask. Most people who watch Nightfall Narratives aren't actually subscribed. If you're one of them, take a second to hit that subscribe button. We upload new true horror stories every week, and subscribing ensures you never miss the next nightmare. If you're enjoying the video, leave a like. It tells YouTube to recommend Nightfall Narratives to more horror fans. And while you're watching, keep track of which story unsettles you the most. When you've heard all 3, come back and tell me in the comments. Story 1, Story 2, or Story 3. I read as many comments as I can, and your feedback helps shape future videos. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. Because the first officer learned that even a trained police dog can recognize danger before a human ever sees it. I've been a K9 handler for almost 9 years. My partner is a 4-year-old German Shepherd named Rex. He's trained in tracking and narcotics detection, and he is, without exaggeration, the steadiest dog I've ever worked with. I've taken him into abandoned warehouses, collapsed structures, black forests at 2 in the morning. Nothing rattles him. That's exactly why what happened on this one night has never left me. We were called to assist patrol on a house search after a foot pursuit. Officers had tried to stop a male suspect a few blocks away. He ran. They chased him through a string of backyards and lost him near one particular property. When they checked the yard, the side gate was open.
There!
The back door of the house was unlocked.
He's heading towards the fence!
A neighbor had also reported hearing some kind of struggle out back, which only raised the temperature of the whole call. Patrol swept the first floor but weren't comfortable clearing the house. They believed the suspect might have gone inside and could still be hiding somewhere upstairs. Rex and I got there about 20 minutes later. 2-story house, quiet subdivision, no sign of forced entry from the front. The homeowners were reportedly out of town. The officers briefed me fast.
Suspect is in the house.
We need to set up a perimeter.
All units, move in.
Let's do this, Rex.
He pulled forward immediately, room to room. Living room clear, kitchen clear, laundry room clear. We moved upstairs. Here's a question for you before we go further. If you were the one holding that leash, at what point would your instincts start telling you something was wrong? Drop your answer in the comments because it matters for what comes next. Upstairs was a narrow hallway with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom at the end. No draft, no fresh air, every window shut tight, exactly what you'd expect from a locked-up house with nobody home. We cleared the first bedroom, cleared the second, then Rex pulled hard toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. I checked it myself. Clean, nothing out of place. Rex sniffed the vanity, the floor, the base of the tub, and then he froze. His ears shot forward. His whole body went rigid. A low growl started in his chest and he was staring past me, out the bathroom door, into the hallway. The growl turned into full barking. I stepped backward out of the bathroom with him. "What is it?" I said. Quiet, mostly to myself. Rex was locked onto something down that hallway like it was the only thing in the world. At the far end, near the last bedroom door, I saw what he was barking at. A figure, standing completely still. Tall, dark, motionless in a way that didn't match anything human standing casually. It did not look like any of the officers downstairs, and even if it had been one of them, they would have announced themselves the second they saw me and a police dog. I called out, Identified myself, told them there was a canine present. Nothing. No response, no movement. "Who is that?" I said flatly this time. Nothing. Rex was pulling backward now, away from it, something I had never once seen him do in 9 years. Then the figure turned and stepped into the bedroom at the end of the hall. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I had to. I knew every single officer on that scene. I knew exactly where each of them was positioned. None of them were upstairs with me. Rex planted his feet. I pulled, and he resisted with everything he had, looking up at me like he genuinely could not understand why I was making him walk toward that room. I drew my weapon, radioed that I possibly...
Suspect on foot! Send backup now!
I forced Rex forward. He fought me the entire way. At the doorway, he stopped completely and refused to cross the threshold. I went in first, weapon raised, empty. A bed against one wall, a dresser across from it. Nothing else. I waited for backup before doing a full search. We checked under the bed, checked the closet, checked the window, which was locked from the inside. No attic hatch, no crawl space, nothing. Rex would not set one paw across that doorway. Not for me, not for another officer who tried to coax him in with a treat. We searched that room and the surrounding rooms for 20 minutes, pulled at drywall for false panels, checked every space a person could physically fit into. There was nowhere for anyone to have gone. After 20 minutes, I told the others I needed to get Rex out of the house. The whole way down the stairs, he kept glancing back at that bedroom door. The second we stepped outside into the night air, his whole body relaxed. When I put him in his crate, he curled up immediately, but he didn't look at me the way he usually does after we clear a scene. That look was gone. Patrol wrapped up shortly after. I've replayed that hallway 1,000 times since. I believe to this day that it was the suspect, a real, breathing person. I just cannot explain how he got out of a room with no exit, or why a dog with 9 years of steady nerve refused to go near it. Some people in my department would tell you what Rex and I saw wasn't a person at all. I don't know what to call it. What I do know is that Rex has never reacted like that before, and he hasn't since. He has tracked armed suspects through pitch-black woods without a flicker of hesitation. But that room, he would not go inside. I trust that dog more than I trust my own instincts. And almost everyone in my department has one call like this. One night they can't fully explain. This one was mine. If Story 1 unsettled you, don't relax just yet, because Story 2 is based on a call that still haunts the officer who answered it. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed before we continue. I joined the police force in a remote town I won't name when I was 21. Because I was the rookie, they put me on nights, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I never minded it. I've always been a night owl.
Dispatch to Unit 42. Report of a suspicious vehicle in the vicinity of 4th and Elm.
To keep me company. 1 year into the job, a night came that changed how I see this work permanently. A severe thunderstorm rolled through town that night and knocked out power across half the county. Roads were flooding. I parked my cruiser in a lot near the center of town to stay central in case accident calls started coming in. At 2 in the morning, our dispatcher, Claire, came over the radio. A caller, sounding like an adult male, claimed he had been kidnapped and was being held inside someone's home. The call cut out before she could get an address confirmed. When she tried calling back, no answer. Here's where it gets strange. Claire came back on the radio a few seconds later, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice even through the static. She said the caller's voice sounded altered somehow, digitally, or just strained in a way she couldn't place. Her exact words were that it sounded like a young girl. She told us to proceed with extreme caution. I was the closest unit, about 10 minutes out. I radioed that I'd respond and requested backup. A fellow rookie named Chris said he could be there in 5. Ask yourself this while you're listening. If dispatch told you an adult man's voice on a 911 call sounded like a child, what would be going through your head on the drive there? Let me know in the comments because that detail never left me either. When I turned onto the street, every streetlight on the block was out. Total blackout, which meant we'd be working with almost no visibility. I followed GPS to the house and found Chris's cruiser already idling out front. The house looked abandoned. Grass up past my knees, bushes grown wild over every window, roof caved in patches with shingles missing entirely across half of it. The kind of place that tells you something about the person living inside before you ever knock on the door. We stepped out into the pouring rain, umbrellas up, and made our way up a waterlogged path to the front door. I rang the bell. We stood there listening. After a few seconds, footsteps shuffled up on the other side. Then they stopped completely. Whoever it was just stood there, still, like they were listening back at us. I felt it before I understood it, that specific feeling of being watched through a door you can't see through. I glanced at the peephole just as a shape shifted away from it on the other side. "If you're in there, we'd like to ask a few questions. Open up, please," I said. Another long pause. Then the lock turned and the door creaked open a single foot. A man in his early 30s peered out through the gap, overweight, balding, thick glasses. One look in his eyes told me he was hiding something. I told him about the call from his address. He said it must have been a pocket dial. I asked how a pocket dial explains a voice claiming to be kidnapped. He looked away and said he didn't know anything about a voice. I asked if anyone else was in the house. He said he lived alone. I told him we needed to look inside. He said not without a warrant. These days, that takes minutes, not hours. I called it in, and within 5 minutes, Claire confirmed a judge had approved a telephonic warrant. We were clear to enter. His hands were visibly shaking as he pulled the door open. The smell hit me before anything else, thick and rotten. My flashlight found a living room straight ahead. Piles of clothes and dishes on the floor, roaches moving across the mess. A couch that looked pulled from a curb. This was clearly where he lived his day-to-day life, and it told me everything about the kind of case this might turn into. Then my foot struck something on the floor. I looked down and saw a pink toy playhouse, the exact model I had bought my own daughter the previous Christmas. I asked if he had kids. He said no, but that his nieces visited sometimes, so he kept a few toys around. No mother would ever let a child spend an afternoon in this house, and both Chris and I knew it without saying a word. I told him this was his last chance to be honest about who else was inside. He insisted again that he was alone. I started down the hallway. He followed, saying there was nothing back there. Chris pulled him back by the arm and told him to stay put. The first room off the hallway held more scattered toys, and in the corner, a shape hunched in a rocking chair that made my stomach drop before I realized it was an oversized doll dressed in women's clothing. On the bed beside it, folded piles of women's blouses and jeans, sorted neatly by color, in a house where nothing else was organized at all. It was one of those details that doesn't make sense in the moment but sits wrong in your gut regardless. I cleared the second bedroom, empty, and reached the final door at the end of the hall. Behind me, the man suddenly offered to show us upstairs instead. I told him the basement was first. He said again there was nothing down there. I twisted the handle and the door groaned open on its hinges, revealing wooden stairs descending into total darkness. My light only reached the landing. From somewhere deeper in that room, something rattled. The man started apologizing over and over to both of us for nothing we had asked about yet. I went down. Each step creaked. The rattling grew louder. At the bottom, my light swept over stacked boxes until it landed on another door across the room, the source of the sound. I ordered whoever was behind it to come out slowly with their hands visible. Nothing. I repeated the command. Still nothing. I crossed the room, weapon raised, and stopped a few feet from the door listening. Whatever was on the other side had gone completely still, matching my silence with its own. I positioned myself off to the side in case someone tried to fire through the door, reached for the handle and pulled it open. Nothing came out. I said a quiet prayer and stepped into the doorway with my weapon raised. What I found in that room,
Police,
I won't describe in detail.
Come out
What I can
slowly.
tell you is that a man in his mid-40s, a father of 3, a respected member of a community 2 counties over, had been held captive in that basement for 2 years. Everyone, including his own family, believed he was dead. Earlier that same night, the homeowner had brought him dinner and accidentally left his phone behind. The victim managed to activate the voice assistant and dial 911. When we found him, he had been restrained in a way that kept him from making noise or calling upward. When I gave the command to come out, he froze, not out of defiance, but out of fear that I would see him as a threat and use force. We arrested the homeowner on the spot and got the victim to a hospital immediately. I am grateful every day that we walked out of that basement with him alive. But there is one detail that has never let go of me. Why did that man's voice sound like a child's when he made that call? The only explanation I've ever accepted is that after 2 years of captivity, speaking that way had become the only voice he had left. And if that's true, it raises a question I still can't answer. What else was he forced to do down there? We're 2 stories in, and if you've made it this far, you already know these aren't jump scare videos. They're the real thing, told by the people who lived through them. If you want more of this every week, subscribing genuinely helps this channel keep going, and it costs you nothing but a tap. You've made it this far, but don't assume you've heard the worst. Story 3 begins with a routine welfare check and ends with a mystery that remains unsolved. I've worked patrol for a little over 8 years, most of it on nights. You see a lot on midnights. Domestic fights, drunk drivers, break-ins, overdoses. After enough years, most calls blend into one another. This one didn't. It happened in late October, around 2:40 in the morning. Dispatch sent me out on a 911 hang-up. The caller said she'd heard a woman screaming from the house next door. Quiet residential street, the kind with nothing but single-family homes and almost zero police activity. By the time she'd dialed, the screaming had already stopped, but she was certain of what she'd heard. I was 5 minutes out. When I pulled up, the street was dead silent, light rain falling just enough to make the road shine under the streetlights. The house was a 2-story with a small front porch, no lights on inside. I parked a few houses down and walked up on foot. As I got closer, I noticed the front door was cracked open.
This is Unit 4. I have an open door at 4112 Maple.
I radioed it in, requested another unit, and was told backup was at least 10 minutes out. At that time of night, on that street, 10 minutes felt like a long time to be standing alone in front of an open door. I stepped onto the porch and listened. Nothing but rain. I knocked and announced myself. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Between the report of screaming and an open door at 2 in the morning, I had what we call exigent circumstances, which meant I didn't need to wait for permission to go in. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. No forced entry, no odd smell. Living room clean and undisturbed straight ahead. I cleared it, checked behind the couch, moved into the kitchen. My flashlight passed over a full sink and a glass of water still sitting on the table, mostly full. Someone had been sitting there recently. I remember making a mental note of that glass specifically, because it meant this house had been occupied minutes, maybe seconds, before I walked in. I called out again. My own voice sounded too loud in that quiet house. I'm not usually the type to get nervous on a late call, but something about the stillness of that place was working on me. If you were standing in that kitchen right then, at what point would you have called for backup a second time? Tell me in the comments, because I've asked myself that question more than once. I moved down the hallway. Small bathroom on the right, guest bedroom on the left, both clear. At the end, a staircase leading up. As I put my foot on the first stair, I heard it. A quick shuffle above me like a foot dragging across carpet. I froze, then drew my weapon and started climbing slowly. Upstairs, 3 doors. 2 closed, 1 cracked open at the far end. As I reached the top, I heard the shuffle again, coming from that open door. I announced myself a 3rd time.
Police, open the door!
I pushed the door open with my foot. Larger bedroom than the one downstairs, bed unmade, sheets hanging off one side, a lamp knocked over on the floor. That lamp was the first thing that felt wrong to me. I checked the closet, empty. Under the bed, nothing. Window shut and locked from the inside. No way in or out that I could find. The rest of the upstairs still needed clearing. Second bedroom looked like a child's room. Toys on the floor, small dresser, posters on the walls. Empty. Last door was the bathroom. As I reached for the handle, I noticed something on the carpet just outside it. A dark patch I first mistook for a shadow from my flashlight. I crouched down and touched it with a gloved hand. Blood. Not a large amount, but enough to have pooled slightly. My pulse spiked instantly. I called it in and asked,
I need immediate backup at the hallway. 3rd floor. Send everyone. I'm going in now.
Shower curtain closed. Streaks of blood on the tile leading toward the tub. I pulled the curtain back. Empty tub. More blood pooled near the drain, like someone had stood there bleeding for a while before whatever happened next. I searched every inch of that bathroom and found nothing else. Backup was still minutes away, and I was alone in a house with fresh blood and no victim. I did another slow sweep of the upstairs. Then I heard it, a floorboard creaking under weight coming from downstairs. I moved back to the staircase and aimed my flashlight down into the dark living room. No visible movement, but I felt it the same way I'd felt it at the front door. Someone was down there with me. I descended slowly, controlling my breathing. Cleared the living room again. Cleared the kitchen again. Then I noticed something I'd missed the first time. A door beside the refrigerator I'd assumed was a pantry, now sitting slightly ajar. I was almost certain it had been shut when I first walked past it. I opened it wider. Not a pantry. A narrow staircase leading down into a basement. I flipped the light switch at the top and nothing happened. Either the bulb was dead, or the power down there had been cut deliberately.
Basement clear. Affirmative. Proceed.
And started down. Unfinished space, concrete floor, exposed beams, boxes stacked along one wall. At the bottom of the stairs, my light caught a metal folding chair sitting alone in the middle of the room, and beneath it, a pool of blood far larger than anything I'd seen upstairs. Zip ties hung from both armrests already cut through. Then, in the corner of my light, movement. A figure bolted from behind a stack of boxes toward the back wall. I shouted for them to stop and moved after them, but they were already at a small window near the ceiling. Glass shattered. By the time I reached that corner, they were gone through it. I climbed out after them, cutting my hand on broken glass in the process, into the narrow side yard between the houses. Rain still coming down. I caught a glimpse of a dark shape sprinting toward the alley at the end of the block, chased for a moment, and lost them at the corner. Backup arrived minutes later. We set a perimeter, brought in a K9 unit, and detectives worked the scene through the night. But we never found the person who ran. The house belonged to a man who lived alone, and he was nowhere to be found. We recovered his wallet upstairs and his phone still on the kitchen counter. Everything in that basement suggested he had been restrained in that chair. The blood matched him, and there was a lot of it, but not enough for the medical examiner to confirm he had died there. He was never located. The neighbor who called it in swore to this day that she heard a woman screaming. We never identified a single woman connected to that address, and nothing in the house suggested anyone else had ever lived there. I still don't know if I walked into the middle of something, or arrived just after it ended. If that person hadn't knocked over a stack of boxes in that basement, I probably would have walked out of that house thinking it was a false alarm and gone on with my shift. The case is still technically open. Sometimes I still drive down that street on patrol. A new family lives there now. Kids' bikes in the driveway. It's a completely normal neighborhood. Sometimes that's exactly the kind of neighborhood where the worst things happen. 3 officers. 3 ordinary calls that stopped being ordinary within minutes. A dog that refused to walk into an empty room. A voice on a phone that shouldn't have sounded the way it did. A basement chair with the zip ties already cut, and no one left to explain why. Out of all 3, which one would you have walked away from believing it was over, and which one would still be sitting with you the next morning? Drop your answer below, 1, 2, or 3. I read every single comment on these videos. If this is the kind of story you want more of, this channel exists entirely for that. New true horror stories go up every week, and if you're not subscribed yet, you're going to miss the next one. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps this channel keep telling stories like this. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for spending part of your night with Nightfall Narratives. Until next time, lock your doors, check your windows, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.